Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Corione, your witch in residence here on YouTube. And today I want to talk about one of my favorite characters from fiction, Sherlock Holmes. Now, before I get too deep in on the particular version that we're going to be looking at today, I do just want to say to all my channel members, thank you so much for being a member. To anyone who is considering becoming a channel member, I really would appreciate it if you could drop a like or a subscribe on this video. That would go wonderfully. And for those that don't, please consider sharing this out for your friends who may consider this to be something worth their attention. Now, with all that in mind, let's take a deeper look at the Robert Downey Jr. version of Sherlock Holmes. Now, there is a reason why I like this version better than most. Sherlock Holmes is supposed to be a not very well functioning human, which Robert Downey Jr. knows all of too well and thankfully has cleaned up his act. But he's supposed to be somebody who doesn't function well without a mystery. It's why I actually like the show House MD, because it's effectively the same character, only it's a doctor as opposed to a detective. Now, this is, in general, how some people's minds actually do work. Where, unless they have a problem, unless they have a puzzle, unless they have something to do, they try to find things that are not necessarily the healthiest things to be doing. Christianity has a saying that idle hands are the devil's playthings. And that certainly rings true for a person like Sherlock Holmes. He needs something to do. He needs puzzles to solve. And the question becomes a little bit, why does he need those puzzles to solve? Why does his brain take him to bad places when he doesn't have something to work on? And I would argue this is one of the other curses of genius that exist out there, that when someone is so good at something, other things just don't work for them. Now, what do we do for somebody like this? How do we help them? I mean, we can't just offer them puzzles indefinitely. There are a limited number of puzzles on the planet. What we can do, though, is try to convince them that they don't always have to be solving people. They don't always have to be feeding the wheel in their mind that must keep rotating. But that only comes from a willingness to get help on their problem. I'm reminded of a wonderful friend of mine who was on the ledge quite a fair bit of times because life didn't have value anymore to them. So we had to find something to give them value, right? An unsolvable puzzle, an unwinnable question, something that they could plug at healthfully, in a healthful way. And ultimately what we settled on was how to be the best person possible. Now, that isn't always going to work for everybody, right? Not everybody is inclined to think in those terms. But the options exist, okay? There are ways to do these things. And we should always keep an eye open for them, okay? The other piece to the genius of this portrayal is we get an opportunity to see how his mind works, how he builds the scenarios of how things are going to play out. And I have often seen this in some of the most brilliant people I've ever met, where they will construct a idea of how things are going to go before they enter into the room. This is a very healthy habit to have. There is a joke that goes among witches that in fantasy worlds, the reason why it's the witch that usually lives the longest, or the magic user, is because without any sort of physical advantage on the kind of supernatural creatures they're facing, they have to out prepare their opponent. They have to out Batman their opponent, for lack of a better term. So they have to know how to read people and how to think about things and how to slow down their thoughts, analyze a situation, come up with a plan to deal with whatever the problem is, and then implement it. This is not an easy thing to do, but it is a practice I highly recommend for people in the workplace. Okay. Now, I'm not saying, develop a plan to beat up your supervisor. That would be completely wrong. What I am instead suggesting is, let's say you have a performance review coming up. Nothing in that review should come as a shock to you. Go into that review with everything planned out, what they could say about you, what your responses are going to be. And plan it out in such a way that maybe you talk to somebody ahead of time so that you're giving the right answers, that it's not hitting on an emotional level. You're hitting on an intuitive level, on a understanding level, on a tactical level of exactly how you're going to go in, exactly how you're going to resolve the concerns they have, and then exactly how you're going to walk out of that room. And you can do this. You can do this in daily life. You can do this along the way. I routinely will walk into meetings with people and know what I'm going to say and know how it's going to go before I walk into the room, and then have a plan for how I'm going to walk out of the room. And I do this because it shows not just respect to me, but to the other party, that I care so much about their time that I'm going to do the homework, that I'm going to prepare, that I value them enough to be ready for whatever's going to come my way. Now, this doesn't always work out, and it does lead to a lack of surprise sometimes, but it's worth it, okay? It's worth it to be able to understand the people around you. And I feel like that's actually the one place where Holmes probably isn't the best, because he can anticipate what events are going to happen. He can anticipate simple people's reactions. He can deduce what certain components of a thing mean, but he doesn't understand the human heart very well. And that is ultimately his weakness. And that is something that I think my viewers understand better than they give themselves credit. You've listened to my words, you've heard what I have to say about things, and you're intuitive enough to know that there's more going on in popular culture movies than maybe you've seen before, that you're willing to give these pieces a new perspective, a new look. I'm going to suggest you go ahead and do that. Take a new look at the people around you. See if you can understand them and empathize with them a little bit. And in understanding their emotional state and the logic behind their actions, try to figure out where they're going to go next, what's going to happen with them next, and how you can be a friend or a brother or just a really helpful person for them down the road. Okay? If we understand somebody to the point where we can anticipate their actions, you're going to find that you're going to like a person a lot more once you understand them a lot more. And I think, given these days and some of the things that are going on in the world right now, it's really important that we understand each other. That we don't just understand the side of the argument we have been told to understand, but understand all sides of the argument. I think that's a very, very important thing to do, and a very, very important piece for all of us to do. We may know the side that we are rooting on in global affairs. I'm, for example, very pro Canada, shocker, but we may not necessarily understand the other people involved in the conflict as well. So consider that. Consider things from their perspective. Consider how they're feeling based on what's being presented. And then let's go ahead and acknowledge that and move forward with that and try to help everybody involved out. I think long term, that's going to be the key to understanding all of this, because while they say that people who have psychopathy make the best CEOs, the best companies are run by empathetic people who care. Okay? The organizations that do the best work, the greatest help for the world, are the ones that care about not just the species, not just a group, but every person. And they do it at the person level. So I would like to suggest watching Sherlock Holmes a second time, watching for how he picks apart a scenario and see the logic that he uses, and then try it with a friend. See if you can anticipate what your friend's going to do next. See if you can understand it. See if you can get an idea of where they're going to go. And then figure out the best way to help them. And then do it. And then please, in the comments, write down what happened and how it went. And, we'll of course have some good discussion and possibly a few smiles about it. But I think you guys can do this. I personally think I have the greatest audience on YouTube. I don't think any of you guys will fight me on that. But I think trying this, and I think being that better friend for just one person and stretching your own skills and learning how to prepare yourself will help you down the road. Not necessarily for big, giant things when everything is going sideways, but maybe for the little times when there's something sad and tragic going on and somebody needs help or somebody needs a friend and they just need some understanding. I'm often reminded of some of the people that are the hardest to help. With this being November, sometimes the hardest people to help are veterans, because you can talk to people about what happened, but they'll never understand it until they experience it. And I get that. I understand the camaraderie under fire. And I understand the hurry up and wait mentality. I grew up in a military family. I get it. And you know that these guys have been through a lot and you want to do something great for them. And just listening, just being there is sometimes the best thing you can possibly do for your friends who've seen a lot. And understanding them at a deep level to the point where you can predict where they're going to go, when they're going to zig and when they're going to zag, will help you build that rapport with them when they really need it. And to all of those who have served, I deeply thank you for your service. And to all of those who have served in other ways, I thank you for building the world that I want to live in. And to everybody else, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.